Hey guys, welcome back to Warships Weekly, the weekly podcast all about warships and what is going on. I am Josh,
I'm Nicodemus81.
and this week we're talking about the big new patch 5.3 that just came out, team battles, and some ships that were affected by the changes. Interesting patch so far. How are you liking it?
It's been interesting. Definitely a lot of changes, some shifts in the meta as a result, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I've liked it. It's we played the test server, and test servers are only so good. Player base, the lack of people, a good number on a test server is like 1,200, and it tends to be people just playing the dream ships and everything. But they added team battles, which I thought was good, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. There's so many changes that I feel like one, we're gonna need to like learn how to play the game again to a point, and two, I think some were needed, some buffs for some ships, but so far I think it's been going all right. Really, I think it's been a nice change to the game in certain aspects.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think you see more cruisers now than before as a result of the change. My aim's been off since the patch, so I'm blaming 5.3 as a result.
It seems like shots that I thought were going to be amazing are off a little bit now, and I don't know if that's just a couple patches back, they changed the location of the Citadel a little bit. It seemed like it was off the water line, because usually when you shoot a Citadel, you tend to be aiming for most likely center mass or whatever, and right along the water line. This one, and then the old one, they moved it up a tiny bit, and then they had to relearn it back at the water line. This one, it seems like shots from battleships, shots from cruisers. It seems like, oh man, that dude is dead, and then it's just like it's a big hit still. You get the especially from a battleship, you get that 12, 13,000 hit, but it's just no Citadel, and I don't know what they did, and I'm not the only person to be like, hey, does it seem weird? You've been seeing it too. Uh, Nothing's been said, nothing's in the patch notes about it, and I don't know if maybe we're just all getting wrecked by a placebo effect, or we're all playing the same battleship, and we just all suck at it now. But, I mean, for me, I've seen it most in the Fuso, and it's different. There's shots I feel like there would be dead ships last patch. This patch, I feel like they're fine.
Yeah, definitely noticed that in my Tirpitz salvos before that used to just would take a cruiser to half health or less. Like, oh, he got away with only 4K damage on 2 hits or something, and a lot more penetrations and less citadels for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know what the end result is, or what the driver is, or what the stealth change was, but it certainly seems like something's a little bit different, and I haven't quite put my finger on it yet.
and like even when Q stopped by the stream, one of the guys from More Gaming, and we were kind of laughing about it. I was like, "Oh, the Fuso's definitely broken. They nerfed it, blah blah blah." Of course, joking, and then of course, as soon as you start, like any game, as soon as you start whining about something, then I hit like a triple Citadel for kill or whatever, and then like the next day, I had the Kraken comeback game with the Fuso where it was just hitting everything hard, and then just yesterday we had an insane Tirpitz Kraken game where it seemed like no matter where I shot, I was going to get a Citadel almost like every salvo. It seemed like so. It's just you always remember the times that you don't hit Citadels, I think, and maybe that was just there was just a patch. That's definitely why. But it was kind of interesting to see that. Wow, we're actually like I'm missing a lot of these shots, but I think it could easily be more of that. I'm not the one to jump on the bandwagon of like, oh my god, they definitely nerfed it, definitely did this, definitely did that. So I need it's just kind of interesting to see. I wasn't the only one, at least, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I had the game open right now, and there were a ton of changes to captain skills, and I think that's the biggest one, by far the biggest one. The change to it was advanced firing training slash basic firing training. It used to go up to 150 millimeters. It is now they're both down to 139 millimeters. Secondary and anti-aircraft are no longer they aren't affected by it. It's just pure caliber, and that was a pretty big hit to a decent amount of ships. It was a big hit to those middle to lower tier cruisers, and everyone's favorite Mogami and Cleveland, which they're different ships now.
Yeah, they definitely play much different than they used to. It's taken a little bit of adjustment, and obviously with the introduction of team battles too, the Cleveland plays a role there, at least on the American servers. So, yeah, definitely something where I find myself having to kind of readjust the way I used to aim in those ships, and it's definitely been a change. But nothing that we won't get used to, nothing that we can't adjust to, just like other adjustments in the past by wargaming. So for sure.
Definitely, and I feel like we're, as we said last week, I think we're both USN destroyers. They're very very strong right now. It's almost a pseudo buff One actually, a side note. I was watching somebody's stream, and they said it wasn't all these cruiser nerfs, quote unquote nerfs, are happening because of this AFT, but it was actually like a Atlanta buff because the Atlanta's range was so shit compared to everybody else, and now the Atlanta, even though it's still up by a little bit, Cleveland shoots at like 14.8 or something, like 14.6, something right around there. Now the Atlanta is at least somewhat closer because the Atlanta still can use the advanced variant training because the calibers are so much lower. I thought that was kind of funny.
Right, definitely. And those of you that purchased the Kutuzov, you're safe. You're
Yeah,
safe.
that
Wargaming came in and swept you up and made sure that your ship stays the same. So,
the only
uh,
one to not be really, really affected and having the under 155. I thought that was kind of interesting that the Mermans didn't get the same treatment. But yeah, the Kutuzov. I mean, they just got they just sold it, instantly affected, instantly gimped by it. But no, they still have insane range, which I thought was pretty funny because in the past, I think even last week we talked about it with ranked for tier 8 cruisers is there's I think a new lineup really. The top three kind of got changed for strongest cruisers now. And let me know if you agree with this. I think Atago is still number one, but I think Kutuzov's two. Probably the Hipper is three, and the Mogami is probably fourth now. Maybe. I mean, I still think the Mogami is better than the New Orleans in the long run, but I think the Mogami goes from probably second to fourth.
yeah, I would say that's probably accurate. Definitely. I mean, the distance nerf and having to switch to the 203s, you don't have as quick a fire rate. All those things. Obviously, it doesn't affect the fire chance on the ship, but certainly knocks it down a peg. Certainly. I mean, there's no way
Definitely.
around it.
Definitely. But yeah, advanced firing training, basic firing training, things I have to change a lot were, Cleveland. I changed it to demolition expert. I think on mine as well as the manual AA, which I'm finding pretty damn strong. Some other ships like a lot of demo expert is coming out of my cruisers, especially the mid tiers. For the fourth line on captains is if it's not affected by advanced fighting training and you're not a high enough level for survivability expert to affect, if you're rolling a tier four like the Omahas, the Phoenix in the world, you have no AA for the manual. It's almost like you have to go demo expert. So I feel like that was the biggest switch. Losing basic firing training is very mediocre because it's just at one point. But I've noticed that a lot more ships are going to be running demo expert just because, especially lower tiers, there's not much else to pick for there.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and demo expert is such a strong skill too. I mean, just with the way the equation works out for how much it increases your fire chance. I mean, in some cases, it's more than just that flat 4% based on how it's adding in and how the equation works. So, I mean, we won't get into the details of that here for the purposes of this podcast, but yeah, demo expert's super strong, and it just really matters or depends on exactly how you want to run your ship. Do you want to play more defensively and maybe take the extra health? I don't necessarily like it so much on cruisers because I just don't think it's as impactful. It's not as much of a marginal gain to your health pool as, say, on a destroyer, where you're technically going to potentially survive an extra salvo or two because your health pool is so low. So I've definitely gone the way of demo expert on most of my cruisers as well.
That's a good point though on the destroyers is we've talked a lot about this on the stream is destroyer fourth tier. Instantly you go, oh nice, last stand, which was a fourth tier is now at two. I think that's awesome. It makes it a little awkward for Japanese high tier destroyers, especially getting to a 15-point captain, because do you take last stand as a defensive or do you go offensive for the torpedoes? But for USN, people are like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna roll advanced fire and training now. I'm gonna roll this. I'm gonna go demo expert. But really, and my biggest argument is for my USN destroyers, I'm taking and I'm going a 15-point captain, a one, a two, a three, or four, or five for the detection. I'm taking health. My Benson gets 3,200 more life, and my Gearing gets 4,000 more life. And people are like, well, the advanced rank training is so much better, demo expert so much better. I get those, but you got to think one. I want to be able to live through stuff, and you got to think of what the enemy destroyer is going to have. The enemy destroyer majority of destroyers I've seen are taking that life boost, and I think it's not so much what your ship could do; it's what ship you're going to be going against now. And if you have advanced firing training, but if that ship has that much more life, even if you get that extra little shot, because the arc is so bad, it's relatively hard to hit. It's not impossible, of course, but I feel like the life for USN destroyers, at least Japanese, it's its own little thing because they're so stealthy. They don't fire all the time. I think you really, really do need. It's not mandatory, but I think you need that survivability expert for USN destroyers.
Right, it could be the difference between a YOLO torp potentially killing you, depending on whether you take it on the nose or not, and whether or not you're meeting Davy Jones or still in the fight. Albeit at low health, but still alive, right? And not to mention, I mean, with AFT on a DD, I've never found it to be all that effective, especially for US DDs. You could kind of make more of an argument for it on the Russian side, right? Because their gun arcs are so straight line, but on the US DDs, their gun arc is so bad at adding AFT and more distance onto that, you're really not increasing your marginal effectiveness at that distance. So there's really no reason in my mind to take it over potential survivability when you're in those gun battles, when you're in the down and dirty inside, 10, 6 kilometers, and you're firing away on the enemy. So yeah.
And that's a good thing you mentioned too. I think probably the only destroyer that you don't take that life. I think it's huge on Japanese destroyers as well. Is probably the Russians. I think the Russians you probably take the advanced firing training. You could even go balls enough to double up on advanced firing training and demo expert if you really wanted to. But I think those health pools are so big for those anyway that I really think that advanced firing training for those is a pretty solid choice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it gives you that more range, more ability to blind fire, stealth fire from distance on battleships later in matches when you've hopefully cleared out the enemy's DD squadron, and the cruisers are usually hopefully at out of the match or low health and not necessarily being as aggressive at that point if you're on the winning side, obviously. So yeah, definitely, I think it's a more effective route to go for the Russians.
Also, that I think we're kind of in agreement that really there's USN destroyers and Japanese destroyers are probably the only two that need to take survivability expert. Am I wrong there?
Nope, I would agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Yep.
Another big one is the level 3 skill, the torpedo acceleration, plus 5 knots to torpedo speed, minus 20% to torpedo range. I currently have the Kagero working towards the Shimakaze. That skill's pretty fucking cool. 20-kilometer torps now down to 16, but they're 5 knots faster. And how torpedoes work now, they're a little stealthier. That you see them later than what you did months ago. It's pretty insane. I do like that. I think there's very few situations where those do work. I think maybe the Fubuki and the Fubuki with the 15, the Kagero with the 20, the Shimakaze with the 20s. Get those down to a little bit shorter, but they're faster. I think it's easily taken that. You got to take it over Superintendent, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I do feel like the faster torpedoes are really, really nice, especially with maybe hitting a cruiser or two. Maybe the gearing with the 16.5s, but I don't like losing the smoke for that. But have you been able to play with torpedo acceleration at all that much?
Yeah. I've toyed around with it on the. I'm not as high on the IGN destroyer side as you are. I'm only running up to the tier 7 Hatsuharu, but even then, I mean, knocking the 10-kilometer torps down to 8 in exchange for the faster speeds has been nice. And I think this skill in general is ideally suited for the IGN line. I mean, it's almost like it was tailor made for them to give them an interesting choice at that tier, right? Where it's like, well, do I want to be more stealthy and have to sit back further and give myself that option, or would I rather be more up in the fray, potentially helping spot enemy ships and also having those faster torps come in and really make a difference and like you said, potentially snag a cruiser or catch a battleship that's sailing broadside straight line for a little bit too long. So definitely interesting choice, provides a lot of variety in gameplay for sure, so which is always a good thing.
I've actually heard also that you and I both don't really play them. I don't even know if you really play carriers at all. Do you?
I have a tier 5 Bogue that I kind of mess around with on occasion. So.
We're not really carrier players, but I've also heard it's pretty strong for carriers as well. The minimum arming distance is in that the faster torpedoes is actually pretty cool. So I've heard that's relatively strong. Some more pretty big changes are the manual fire control and the secondary fire control, the manual secondary fire control. the manual fire control, 100% more effective AA guns with calibers exceeding 85 millimeters. These are the ones that are going to be relatively close to your ship. It's pretty insane. Cleveland already had strong AA. New Orleans already had strong AA. These ships already had strong AA. You click on that, squadrons are gone, gone. As long as they're relatively close to you. You know the ones that are farther out um, don't hit as hard. But man, if they're a squadron's flying over Cleveland, it's annihilated, annihilated.
Yeah, absolutely. I've honestly been contemplating switching out and going hydroacoustic and then using the manual AA skill for
I never even
AA
thought about
boats,
that.
right? For a more balanced approach, right? Because do you really, really need that increased efficiency of the toggleable consumable on top of this? It feels like it might almost be overkill based on how fast these planes are now dying if they fly over or get too close. So that's something I've been contemplating. I haven't run it yet. I'm thinking about trying that for next week, and then I can obviously report back for next week's cast. But something I've definitely been kicking around in my head. So
Well, one thing I like that they've made, there's not going to be one, cruisers like snowflakes. There's not going to be the one that's the exact same as somebody else. There's so many specs you can run demolition expert, and you can run all these other things and go a super aggressive build, or you can go advanced firing training and manual fire control. I mean, and just be a super support cruiser. I do like that they've added some variety for cruisers. I think it's awesome.
yeah, definitely. I mean, cruisers badly needed it too. I mean, the U.S. side, as we've discussed before in last week's cast, it's certainly sitting kind of at almost a third tier to the other cruiser lines, just because they're just Citadel City and not much utility being provided because carrier players were kind of out of the match, and not playing as much because of nerfs to them in the more recent patches. So the captain skills and other mechanics in the game, which we'll discuss in a little bit, uh, carrier play seems to be more frequent, and thus the U.S. cruiser line is uh, plays a more pivotal role.
Definitely. Another one it's a big, huge change is uh, battleships up until this last patch really didn't pick a tier 5 captain skill, and one that has turned into a pretty usable, um, especially on the Japanese battleship line with its long range AA, is the manual secondary selection. And what it basically does is for the lower tiers, it takes down the dispersion 15%, but the higher tiers, tier 7 and up, 60% on this dispersion. Instantly, people are like, Yamato. For an advanced firing training, plus that, they're so accurate. I mean, it's not like a laser accurate, right? But when you originally saw the pre-patch model secondaries, it was all over the place. They still hit. Now it's like, man, those are hitting heavy and often. It's been with the Yamato, with the Nagato. I haven't played with the Imagi, or I haven't really messed with too many of the USN ships trying that spec yet. But it's a fun spec, man. I do like that there's something there for the level 5 captain for battleships to now pick. It makes us, do we double up on threes, or do we go for that spec of the secondaries? It's a lot of fun. It's crazy how much more accurate they are.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a situation again where it's variety, right? It allows you to choose how you want to play. Do you want to kind of have a more balanced ship, or something that if that DD happens to find itself at your broadside or sneaks up on you, you can at least target them with secondaries and hope to maybe get that lucky detonation or get some damage in, make them maybe turn, gives them something to think about, right? Also makes them more cautious, right? Does he have that secondary armament skill where if I get too close, I'm suddenly going to be taking more damage than I anticipated or bargained for, right? So certainly makes for interesting gameplay.
Also, a couple other ones that got changed a little bit. I think Jack of all trades got buffed its percentage. Last Chance, I believe, was updated a little bit, and another big one was Vigilance. I think it was up from 20 to 25. Another decent little spec for battleships to avoid some torpedoes, at least give them a chance. Doubling that up with the acquisition, um, makes the battleship's life a little easier. I mean, there's still Torpedo City right now, but all in all, I think that there's some decent ones. I think for cruisers, it depends which line you are, which one you're picking. Battleships, I think it's pretty straightforward, kind of what nation you are. And then destroyers, I think, USN at least, I think it's pretty straight line. Japanese, I think, run into some trouble with the last stand versus torpedo. Other than that, though, I do like the changes to the captain skills.
Yeah, it's definitely not as concrete, not as clear cut, right? It's more variety. It's more how do you want to play? Do you want to play defensive? Do you want to play offense? Do you want to play balanced? That sort of thing, definitely. I find myself not necessarily swaying on the side of superintendent for battleships as much as I used to. I think vigilance combined with target acquisition is fantastic. It allows you to see
Absolutely.
torpedoes way out, gives you more than enough time to react to them, and it also helps your team in the process if there's a cruiser that's running a kilometer or so in front of you. So definitely helps in that regard. So yeah, I mean all the skills in general, I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's definitely increased the variation in gameplay, which can only be a good thing.
Something that'll take more, you know, more time to get used to. I wish they would have. One thing we talked about on stream was I wish they would have ran a deal on captain redistributes. That would have been really cool to kind of let us all play around for kind of a discounted price, running different skills. But at least they gave us one reset, so I thought that was pretty cool. A lot of good changes on captain skills. I think it's a good change. Another big thing that has come out is a new game type. We have co-op, we have random, we have ranked, and now we have team battles. I know a lot of people have been wanting to get into team battles. Winter team battles coming, blah blah blah, and now they're here. 77. You can make a team that holds up to 10 people, and then you battle other 77 teams. So you have played these a lot more than I have. Currently, the North American server is tier 5 and 6. I believe all the other servers are 7 and 8. I think the Asian server might be 5 and 6 as well. I think they'll probably, I mean, of course, right now it's just a stress test. People playing games, seeing how popular it is. I think they'll probably end up on 7s and 8s. I don't know why they'd pick something different for ranked and team battles. But how have you seen it? The little bit I play on the test server more. It's fun. Get out there, play with your friends, have fun. You trust your teammates a little bit more. There's that competitive aspect. Um, how are you liking it so far?
I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I think it's one of the most fun and interesting things they've added to the game in quite a while. Getting together with your friends, many of them I've met through your stream, of course, and having that ability to talk and communicate out the strategies to everybody on your team as opposed to just a small subset of 3 people if you're running a division, or if you're solo queuing, it's even worse, right? You're just kind of out there on an island. You kind of have to watch the map. You're kind of guessing at what your teammates might be doing. It's been a ton of fun, and it definitely puts carriers in the spotlight too, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. But yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
And I like it. It's 7v7, maximum 2 battleships. I believe everything else can be whatever they want. It seems to be a carrier on each team, 2 battleships, a mix between cruisers and destroyers. I feel like cruisers at 6, that's why I kind of want it to be higher tiers. Um, for NA, I think it'd be a lot more fun. I think the cruisers at 6 are kind of in a weird spot because they don't have the range that they did 2 weeks ago. So I think it's a little destroyer heavy. But from what we played, it's a lot of fun. I think we've seen decent numbers, people playing it, which is awesome. People making teams, which is awesome. There's I mean, 2 or 3 teams just in our chat that are playing against each other and having some pretty good success too. But I think one thing it's awesome is it gets people excited to play. Divisions was only you and 2 other people, and it was always that awkward. Okay, I want to play two. I want to play two. I only have time to play. Now you have something where you can get you and 3, you and 4 friends, you and 5 friends. You don't even need all 7. You can go out and play together. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great. And just to recap, for those that don't know how the system quite works, I mean, you need a team. You can have up to 10 players total. Only 7 would play at a time, right? The max number of players that can run at one time is 7. The minimum required to run, though, is only 4, and then you can bring in mercenaries. So if, say, you only have 4 people online in a given evening, and to be clear, team battles only run during primetime hours, quote unquote, which is a time frame that wargaming is set up when they feel the most players would be on, so that people aren't always playing team battles, right? So it kind of cycles in and out daily. So you run those 4 players, right? And then you can bring these mercenaries in either through the queue system or additional people that maybe didn't fill your roster initially of the 10 people on your team, or just random people that queue up as a mercenary. So it's very versatile and allows almost anybody to get into team battles in some respect, which is great. I think that's fantastic. It makes it accessible. It doesn't doesn't have certain people on the outside looking in going, dang, if only I had a few people I could play with, I would get to experience this aspect of the game. So it's been really great in that respect.
And if you don't even have a team, you could easily just run as a pure mercenary. A lot of people are doing that right now just to kind of just get a feel. You can just solo queue, run as a mercenary. You can even go in there if you can. I think you can even request to be on a team after the game's over, or ask for an invite, and or even like say in game like, hey, you guys looking for another person, and join a team that way, meet some new people. I think it's really cool. Right now, there's no reward system. There's no one like that. Like I said, I think it's just right now it's just a stress test. And but it adds another, hey, what do you want to do? Randoms are boring. There's no rank season going on right now. Let's play some team battles, have some fun. So I think a huge thing, having another kind of battle competitive zone to play with. I think very, very cool.
Definitely, yeah. It adds a social element to the game. Obviously, it didn't exist before, and those are the things that keep games like this alive, right? So that's great. That's what we want.
Yeah, definitely. But let's kind of go back to the two ships that were hit really, really hard. Well, I guess a bunch of ships, but the two major ships that got hit really, really hard by the changes. Kind of the ships of the week segment, if you will. Cleveland and Mogami. Everyone's saying like the death of the Mogami, death of the Cleveland. I've played them both. I mean, death, even the Murmansk, the Phoenix, the Omaha, the Marblehead, um, the St. Louis. I guess I don't know if the St. Louis gets below that threshold, but all these ships that are above the 139, I mean, maybe even the Phoenix is still good. I'm not sure. Um, all these are so affected. I've played the Cleveland, and going from almost like an 18-kilometer range, like 17.6 or whatever the hell it was, 2 weeks ago, to like a 14.8. It's huge, man. And the Mogami, I haven't played the Mogami in a long time because I have the Atago. There's other eights I was playing during the time. The 155s on the Mogami, it's almost a dead ship almost, I'd say. If you have the Atago, there's no reason to play it. Um, and I do think the Mogami should get buffed a little bit I mean, people are rolling the 203s anyway, but the Mogami is worse I think in every aspect to the Atago. I think the range should get buffed a little bit, but at least match the Atago.
Right. Yeah, I think the Mogami's range in the 203s is what 15.1. I want to say, which I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the Otago up in front of me here at the moment, but I'm not sure how that compares. I think it's a little bit less, but yeah, it's certainly impactful. And at tier 8 in a cruiser that's kind of supposed to be doing that stealth fire thing, right? That's kind of how the IGN line's played. It's rough. It's definitely a tough spot for the Mogami right now. I know the word of the day from a lot of the players that I've been playing with and do play with on the regular as well. Should I even sell this thing? I've gotten a Tago, right? Do I keep this thing? Is it even worth keeping anymore? So definitely some people kicking the tires and deciding whether or not it's even worth it to keep it in their ship lineup at this point, and instead taking the credits temporarily for right now. So
I mean, I have been telling people if you have the Atago, there's no reason for the Mogami. And yeah, I just looked it up. Atago's at 15.8 and the Mogami is at 15.1. I mean, it should at least be even, you know. It doesn't need to be more. It doesn't need to be like 16.1 or something like that. At least make it even. I believe like isn't the Atago even stealthier? The Mogami is a little bit stealthier at 2 kilometers, but it has zero point 0.7 less kilometers range. I think it needs to at least be matched, at least make up that stealthiness. Have it be 15.6 even. But I've been telling people if you have the Atago, there's zero reason to keep the Mogami anymore because of the changes to the 155s.
yeah, I would agree. I don't see much reason to keep it. I mean, it's got less effective torpedoes, and as you said, not nearly as good a range. So yeah, really
No
hard
heal.
No heal. You buried the lead again, right?
There you
No
go.
heal on the Mogami. So what's the point, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a lesser effective ship at tier 8 than the Otago would be in the same line of ships. So yeah,
By no
certainly
means is it a bad ship. It's just not what it was.
we should be playing taps right now for the Mogami, right?
I know, right? Cleveland, on the other hand, I think it's still pretty decent. Played some games in it. Still a lot of fun to play. People already had said that they weren't using advanced firing training on the Cleveland. Um, The Cleveland, I think, has taken a little bit of a support role, little off the quote unquote front lines because it could shoot so far away. Um, it's an amazing. I think it's still the strongest tier six. I know there's some Nuremberg fans out there. I personally like the Cleveland more, um, but losing like 3 kilometers, almost 3 kilometer range, it definitely affects the ship. It's still strong though. Like both these ships are still strong. They just aren't what they were. I think the Mogami was hit definitely harder. The Mermats was hit relatively hard. Um, the Cleveland hard, but there's still I think there's still decent ships for sure.
Yeah, I think at that tier, it's not nearly as impactful as it was for the Mogami, right? So I think the Cleveland still is an effective ship, like you said. It still starts fires like crazy. And now, honestly, you have the choice. You can choose a tier four. You can choose to go that AA route, or you can choose, do I want to burn battleships down still? Most battleships, are going to be a little bit rangier than your Cleveland would be, but you're still an effective ship in multiple aspects of the game. So it's definitely not nearly the hit that the Mogami took, in my mind.
Good, good. Well, how have you been playing this week? Let's look at our weekend recap. How have you been playing?
Oh, my week's been rough, man. I don't,
New
to say the
patch, man.
least. Yeah, new patch, lots of discovery going on. I've really enjoyed my destroyers on the IJN side, just kind of messing around with that torp speed increase, like we talked about earlier. That's been a ton of fun. But aside from that, it's been an adjustment. It's been some growing pains with the 5.3 for sure. Had some effective games, had some not so effective games. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, with the new patch, I mean this is a big patch. There's a lot of changes going on. A lot of there's a new learning curve going on. I've actually had a lot of fun in this patch though, and recently, I mean, the patch is less than a week old. It's I've been playing a lot of high tiers, so I have been playing the lower tiers as much. So I think those are definitely affected. There's going to be a lot of different play down there. Um, but I've actually had a lot of fun. I think that some of the changes were pretty good, um, pretty noticeable in certain situations. I think the USN destroyers were still strong. I think the buffs. I think certain classes got good buffs, um, and I still think cruisers are kind of USN cruisers are buff if the CV population stays up, and that's a big if. Um, but I've had a lot of fun. I think some of the changes were pretty dang good. Like I said, I haven't delved into the carriers that much, so I can't speak on that. Battleships seem fine. The Yamato was actually hit pretty hard. I didn't even think about bringing that up, but I have noticed that the Yamatos are a little bit more mortal now. I personally didn't think, and if you don't know, the Yamato's heal got not nerfed. It was insane before. Now it's a bit more realistic. I think it's on the same par as the Montanas. I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, Yamatos go down a little bit easier. They still hit like a truck, and you got to survive that. But I have noticed that Yamatos go down a little bit easier, and that's good for high tiers. When you play a decent amount of high tiers, I mean, I've definitely played a little bit more, but have you noticed the Yamato was becoming artificial reefs a little bit more?
Yeah, the models are definitely more down to earth for sure. Certainly easier to bring down with the heel being more in line with that of their U.S. Counterpart. Um, yeah, it's a situation where was the heel kind of almost over nerfed a little bit just because people see Yamato on the battlefield, right? And it becomes the instant focus. Like that thing needs to die, and it needs to die as fast as possible, especially if you don't have a Yamato on your team to kind of counter it, right? So it's like I don't know. I mean, time will tell, right? Did they maybe go too far with the heel? Should it have maybe been a little bit better than its counterparts? Hard to say. Jury's still out.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard because I'm a USN Battleship fanboy. I love the Montana and closed beta, um, and until that thing is at least a contender, I'm fine for the nerfs of the Yamato. I mean, I do like playing the Yamato. I just want the Montana to be equal. Like you said, if you see a Yamato on the enemy team, he needs to die. If you see a Montana on the enemy team, it's still scary. It's not a Yamato, you know. It's still a tier 10 battleship. It's still very scary. It's a battleship in general. It's just scary. But if you're coming up against a Montana or a Yamato, what are you more scared of? The Yamato.
Sure, definitely Yamato. Agree.
I mean, it's just like I want those to be an even fight. The Yamato still whoops on Montanas, um, but I think the heal is good. I think the models aren't quite as immortal as they used to be, but they're definitely going down a little easier, and it's not that terrible to see too.
Sure, if it balances gameplay, then it's good for sure.
Well, guys, that has been it for the second episode of Warships Weekly. We went over the 5.3 patch, the changes, the team battles, all the good stuff that has come out of this patch. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I have been me, Josh. You can check me out on twitch.tv/me, Josh, twitter.tv/me, Josh TV. Also hit me up on YouTube as well.
And I'm Nicodemus81, and thanks for listening. Get out there, try those new captain skills, and until next time, action stations. And also, don't forget to reach out to us, guys. We have the email address, warshipsweekly@gmail.com. Give us your comments, your concerns, what you want to hear from us. Just let us know. I mean, this is a podcast in its infancy, and we're looking to create content for you. So reach out and let us know what you think. Thanks.
Also, guys, remember to like, subscribe, leave comments down below. We will catch you guys next week. Peace, bros.